Stories from the newsroom, and we'll start with some breaking news that we're just getting to us from Nottinghamshire, where two men have been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter. That's after a 16-year-old boy was killed by a falling tree there. And we understand that police say the 28-year-old and the 31-year-old who have been arrested were taken into custody after the body of the teenager was found in the village of Carlton in Lindrick. A 28-year-old woman has also been arrested. That's on suspicion of assisting an offender. Detectives now asking any members of the public with any information, including those who may have any CCTV or dashcam footage, to come forward. We will keep across that for you, bring you any more details as we get it. Meanwhile, police in Germany have arrested at least 7 Serbian football fans tonight in the city of Gelsenkirchen after clashes with England supporters. Riot police were seen moving in to separate the groups after fighting broke out ahead of tonight's Euro 2024 game. That's the opening fixture of the tournament for both teams. Officials say there is an exuberant atmosphere around the stadium where the game is currently underway. However, it's being classed as a high-risk event by authorities because of concerns over potential violence. Meanwhile, here in the UK, supporters across the country, and live pictures here from the fan park in Wembley, where many have gathered in their hundreds, some with, well, very confident score predictions ranging up to 15-0 to England, perhaps slightly exaggerated. Currently, England are leading 1-0 as we head into the second half. Well, just hours earlier, police shot a man in Hamburg ahead of another Euros match. This was the moment that shots were fired at the attacker, who was armed with an axe. Officers say the suspect was also carrying a Molotov cocktail, which he tried to light before approaching several people, including police. We now know the attacker is being treated for his injuries. Former police sergeant Harry Tangier told us earlier security across Germany is tight during the tournament and that authorities are well prepared.
If you're in a public area and somebody's got an axe or a knife, if they're very aggressive and mobile, there's amazing how much damage, as we already know from a previous Germany attack, how many people can be hurt and even killed. If you can't isolate that person away from the public or isolate the public away from that individual, then that leaves very few options. So they're thinking about it. They're not just running around thinking, right, let's find this guy and shoot him. And what is the most minimum force we can use, which does not put the public or other officers at risk?
In other news tonight, detectives have named the man that they want to find in connection with a fatal hit-and-run in Coventry on Friday. Delars Alexanders, who's 21, is wanted on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. 12-year-old Keaton Slater was hit by a black BMW just after 4:30 on Friday afternoon. Police now urging anyone with information to come forward. The police officer who rammed an escaped cow in Surrey has been removed from frontline duties while an investigation takes place. The 10-month-old calf, who's now back with her owners, was running loose in Staines on Friday night when she was struck by the vehicle. Police say they have also referred the incident to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. International news, and 80 countries have called for any peace deal between Moscow and Kyiv to be based on the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Today's joint statement is the result of a 2-day peace conference in Switzerland. The final declaration calls for nuclear plants and ports to be secured under Ukraine's control, and for food not to be weaponised, and for all prisoners of war to be released. Well, President Volodymyr Zelensky said earlier that he is now hoping for quick results.
We don't have time for prolonged work. Moving to peace means acting fast. Preparations will take months, not years. So, when the action plans for peace are ready, and when every step is worked out, the path will be opened for the second peace summit, and thus for ending this war, for a just and lasting peace.
Those are the headlines. Your next update from the newsroom at 10 o'clock. In the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back to Mark.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome to a busy Mark Dolan tonight, and well done to England, who are a goal up. Princess Catherine's return, my verdict in just 1 hour in my Take at 10. You won't want to miss it. But first, my big opinion. Whoever thinks that the so-called culture wars are trivial or even imaginary, think again. First of all, what are the culture wars? Well, it's an ongoing battle over the values of this country. Freedom of speech, the definition of a woman, the perception of our history, race relations, the importance of merit, hard work and self-responsibility, and much more besides. There shouldn't be a battle over the values of this country because they are permanent and are what define us. I don't know about you, but I don't change my values every 10 minutes. They were established in my childhood by my family, friends and teachers, and further shaped by my life experience. And over the years, whilst I've changed my opinions about a few things when presented with new evidence, where is the Brexit disaster, for example, I haven't changed my mind about what is fundamentally important. For example, the freedom to say and express what you think without fear of the consequences. The idea that merit should be above box ticking, that our society should be colourblind, that we should have equality of opportunity, but not equality of outcome. That we understand that men and women are different and that women should keep their hard-won sex-based rights. There shouldn't be a one-sided, damning interpretation of our history, given the fact that we gave the world parliamentary democracy, the modern market economy, and we ended slavery. Now, progressives who are stoking and frankly are behind the culture wars, whilst at the same time telling you that they're not happening, love to paint a picture of Britain as some kind of intolerant hellhole, worthy of Mississippi in the 1950s, when the truth is that the UK is arguably the most tolerant, diverse, open and well-integrated society in the world. So there are forces at play to eat away at the fundamental principles which define our very successful nation. These ideological thugs even talk down things like our economy in the face of reality. It gives me hilarious pleasure to tell you that the International Monetary Fund have projected that Brexit Britain will be number 2 in the G7 for per capita economic growth over the next 5 years, second only to the US, and beating Germany, France, Japan and Canada. The forces at work to undermine this country and torch its values are, in my view, toxic, divisive, anti-scientific, mad, dangerous, ungodly and wrong. Enter stage left those geniuses at Avon and Somerset Police, who appear to have ended all burglaries, sexual assaults, murder, cybercrime, fraud, muggings, gang warfare and antisocial behaviour. That's right, they seem to have ended all crime, because yesterday they proudly announced on Twitter that they've arrested a man and imprisoned him for burning a pride flag in a park in Weston-super-Mare. Well, the police are having a Weston-super-Mare on this one. So far, the tweet has been seen by 1.3 million people, with thousands of angry comments, but just 289 likes. We call that death by ratio. Dear the establishment, I hate to break it to you, but the public are not woke. This story about the police was so comical, I honestly had to double-check that it wasn't a parody account. Now, the police have done this guy for criminal damage. He took the flag. But why are they tweeting about it when it's clearly not the crime of the century? This ludicrous story demonstrates just how ideologically captured public institutions like the police have become. And frankly, the double standards of our cops are a sick joke, as they allow so-called peace protesters to indulge in a weekly festival of Jew hate, calling for the wiping out of Israel, and intifada, which means suicide bombs on public transport and in crowded public spaces. No arrests made, but let's lock up a man who performs a stunt criticising a mad new religion which is drastically changing our society and which particularly threatens kids, women and gay people. So for whoever wins this election, let me promise you, whilst the cost of living, crime, school places, defence and the NHS are of critical importance and concern to the public, the so-called culture wars are important too, because they materially impact what it's like to live in this country and what it means to be British. We faced a threat to our values in 2 world wars, and with the help of Winston Churchill and our like-minded allies, we prevailed. We now face an ideological threat from within. The Holy Church of Woke has captured public institutions that you and I pay for, like the police. And the last time I checked, I don't think anyone voted for that. How about that, folks? I'm getting quicker. For full reaction to my big opinion monologue, first of all, your comments, please. gbnews.com/your say. But this evening, I'm delighted to welcome political commentator Benedict Spence, journalist and broadcaster Emma Burnell, and a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight. First of many appearances, I've got no doubt, Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Great to see all 3 of you in the studio. Susie, can I start with you? Listen, this guy's taken a flag. It wasn't his. It probably is criminal damage. But why have the police tweeted about it? I would argue that they have been ideologically captured. What's your view?
I mean, listening to you just then, I do find it a bit of a breath of fresh air. But I do think, I mean, what concerns me the most, I mean, I had 7 instances last year where I had to call the police. For different things, I work with young people, there were situations, I almost got knocked off my bike, waiting on the phone, you know, for the police in an emergency situation. And what I find infuriating is that these things are taking up space. That is what bothers me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, at what point does that become a more pressing issue? So I think for me, that in some ways is...
I mean, surely the burning of the flag is a word or perhaps a clip around the ear.
No, yeah, I mean, look, I think it's...
Rather than arrest and imprisonment in a cell.
Well, exactly. I mean, look, I think it's a wrong thing to do. Do I think someone needs to be arrested for that? No. I've seen far worse things happen and people aren't arrested. So I think, yeah, I think there's just an obsession with certain things, which I think is concerning. But like I say, in some ways what you alluded to there, you know, we've got lots of crimes at the moment, you know, that aren't being dealt with the seriousness that they need, and actually... police time being given to this and then tweeting about it. Yeah, it seems a bit blown out of proportion.
Look, I love our coppers, Emma Burnell. They do an amazing job every day. They do a much harder job than mine, which is putting their lives on the line every day. But I'm concerned about the culture of policing in this country, and that the wokery strikes me as having really infiltrated organisations like the police. What's your view?
Well, I think there's a balance to be struck, is the honest answer. I know I'm going to be Madam Nuance again tonight. Look, I think there are problems with expecting the police to change social norms and to outride some social norms. I also think that there are crimes in this country that are driven by things that... some people would say is an anti-woke stance. So, for example, gay bashing or, let's say, domestic violence, anti-female hatred.
Sure.
These are things that we need to deal with, and sometimes we do need to get the police involved. So it is about finding a balance. Would I have arrested a guy for burning a flag? No. Should he have had a bit of a talking to? Yes. When you put it on Twitter, I think the problem with that, and I think Susie's right, it's about... It says this is a priority. We have so many tweets that this police force are sending a day. This is the crime we've chosen to highlight on this day, rather than, hey, here's a burglary we solved, or here's a rapist we stopped. So I think that there is a sense that we could take the police back to policing crime. Some of those crimes will be things like homophobic attacks.
Sure.
But what we need to do is say, you know, ultimately, what do we want the police force to do, and how can we allow them to do it better?
Well, I suppose Avon and Somerset Police would argue that what they're doing with highlighting this crime is that they want to make sure that everyone that lives in that region feels represented by the police force, including trans people.
I mean, this wasn't his flag, was it? It was somebody else's.
Yeah, he absconded with it.
See, right off the bat there, I've not got a problem with sending somebody to prison for setting fire to something that doesn't belong to them. Just, it doesn't matter if it's a flag, somebody's curtains, it doesn't actually matter what it is. I think it's a sort of a basic principle. If somebody destroys something that doesn't belong to them for whatever reason, actually, I think a couple of nights in the cell or even a couple of weeks in the cells is probably fine. If it's about sending a political message, if it's your own flag, that's absolutely fine. But again, if it's something that you've stolen, I think that there's a line to be drawn there. I think the fact that this is what's being highlighted rather than many other sort of what the police would consider low-level crime, but what actually most people understand to be things that terrorise people's lives, I think doesn't actually, as you say, it might be about saying to the trans community, the LGBT community, yes, we're here for all of you, but actually for the overwhelming majority of people who have to suffer crime every day and don't get police turning up, let alone, tweeting about it, they go, actually, no, you don't represent everybody, you represent a small group of people for whom this is politically expedient for you to tweet about, not the majority, because you didn't turn up to the person that put a brick through my window or stole my post or whatever.
Very briefly, Susie, I just wonder whether the police should stay out of sexual politics. Do we want rainbows painted on police cars? Their job is to catch criminals and lock them up. Just don't you think that they should essentially get less involved in these cultural issues altogether and be police again?
I mean, look, I think I'm agreeing with the nuanced stuff here. I think where
you're all being far too balanced. This is GBNews. This is not what we paid for.
I think where it verges into, I didn't know the flag had been stolen. That's also different for me. And also, I think where things verge into hate crime, I think that is also different. I think I'm just highlighting something broader here. There are lots of people that are suffering from antisocial behaviour that is devastating their lives. When my mum and dad were young parents and I was in my mum's belly, they had like a violent alcoholic ruining their lives. People are dealing with serious levels of crime. I'm not saying this guy shouldn't have been arrested, arrest him. But I think my concern is how much gravitas we're giving to certain things, how much priority we're giving to certain things, who we're trying to please here, why are we trying to please?
Right, that's the million-dollar question.
And that's the thing, and I'm just like, to be honest, where are the lobbyists for the poor people? Where are the lobbyists for the people, like you say, who've got brick being thrown for? Where are the lobbyists for the people living on cancer estates? The elderly people living in fear and whatever. And I'm not trying to make those things more drastic, but that is the reality of lots of people.
OK.
Where are their lobbyists?
Fascinating. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Next up in the big story, with indirect taxes set to rise under Sir Keir Starmer, can Britain afford a Labour government? We'll debate that next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Plenty of mixers, plenty of lovely gin.
Yes.
What have you got here for us? Just explain what you've brought in.
So today I'm going to be presenting the Cotswolds Dry Gin and the Cotswolds Wildflower Gin.
Ooh.
So the first one that was introduced into our market was the Cotswolds Dry Gin. Now we have 9 different types of botanicals. We introduce into our pot still. We introduce obviously juniper berries because it's a London Dry. Angelica roots and coriander seeds, giving it that little limey flavour. Also, cardamom seeds, then black peppercorn, giving it a little spice.
Ooh.
And then the part that is more interesting that regards to the pouring, we have the grapefruit peel and the lime peel. We're going to start with the Cotswolds Dry. Okay, so the first one introduced.
So Ellie was taking the mick out of me this morning because I said my favourite gin was, what is it, pink lemonade?
You like a pink gin and lemonade, yes.
You called me, I'm going to say what you said. You said that's a bit girly.
As you see, it turned into cloudy. Those are the oils of the spices because we don't filter it. Our gin is completely unfiltered.
Got it.
I love this. It's 11:52. It's never too early. Cheers.
Cheers.
And would you have any, this sounds very juvenile, would you have any snacks with gin? Or does it ruin it?
Olives.
Ah, you can tell your culture.
It depends on how you're drinking it and where you are, what you're actually going to do with it. Yeah. But you can have pretty much all sorts. As long as it stays on the salty side, that's what I would go for, personally.
A salty snack.
Yeah, that's what I would go for.
So olives, would you say, is that a good choice? Or crisps, nuts?
They're quite salty, olives, aren't they?
It depends on your taste, really. Like, personally, I wouldn't go for it, but I have seen... And the culture behind gin is drastically increased over the years. The flavours are all different.
That's really good.
Exactly. You see what I mean?
Oh, very nice.
Like that zesty, floral kind of flavour coming through. They're absolutely stunning, aren't they?
The People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. At 10 o'clock, I'm going to be talking about Kate Middleton. Princess Kate, she returned yesterday. What a tonic it was for the nation. A big reaction to my big opinion on the message board. Let me load up those comments as they come through. Let me get to our big story, and I'll get to your feedback in just a moment. But the Guardian newspaper report that Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting has failed to rule out a council tax rise if Labour wins the election, arguing that Labour wanted to do more in power than it has promised in its manifesto, a manifesto in which, although promising not to raise income tax, VAT or national insurance, will see an increase in indirect taxes of over £8 billion. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer has failed repeatedly to rule out increasing capital gains tax, whilst advisors to Britain's super rich say that some clients may leave the country if Labour wins the election, and pushes ahead with plans to abolish tax protections on offshore wealth. And just this weekend, Sir Keir has had to rule out capital gains tax on the sale of people's homes, something that Deputy Leader Angela Rayner was unwilling to rule out in an earlier interview. So with taxes at an 80-year high, can Britain afford a Labour government? Let's get the views of former Labour MP Sean Simon. Sean, lovely to see you again. Labour wants to improve the country, but it's going to cost us, isn't it?
I think the danger is that Labour don't increase tax in the way that they've said that they won't increase tax. I mean, there's never been a government in waiting that I can remember that has promised so clearly we're not going to increase income tax, national insurance, VAT, corporation tax. I mean, and yet the whole country knows the public services are absolutely broken and need to be fixed. And the economy is absolutely broken and need to be fixed. People have not since the war, the Second World War, have people felt so poor. Real wages have gone down in a way that's never happened before. The pound in your pocket never been worth so little.
Sean, can I bust this narrative that the economy is in some way broken? We're currently enjoying the highest GDP growth in the G7. The IMF have projected that the UK will be number 2 only to America for growth in the next 5 years, and wages are keeping up with inflation. Wages are rising at the moment.
I don't know if you actually believe that. The sense in which growth.
Are you questioning the IMF?
I'm questioning you, Mark. To be honest, the sense in which growth has increased was that growth in the UK was the lowest in the Western world for a very long time, and it's now from an unbelievably low base is moving going to start moving relatively quickly compared to its unbelievably
That's not true.
low base.
The ONS had to revise our growth statistics, pointing out that we recovered very swiftly after the pandemic, better than the Eurozone, for example, who spent most of last year languishing in recession. It's the International Monetary Fund, Sean, which is predicting that the UK is going to have really solid growth for the next 5 years. So if Labour get in, they're very lucky.
The truth is, if you look at GDP per capita, so the nation's wealth divided by the number of people in it, in 2007-8, the UK was slightly under, i.e., just towards the end of the last Labour government, the UK was slightly above the United States of America. Look at it now, it's virtually half. We have plummeted down the international economic standings after 14 years of Conservative government. That is what has actually happened. And people don't need me to tell them. And I'm sorry, Mark, they're not persuaded by you telling them that everything's good and they're really
all right.
rich.
I mean, I will add that at the moment, per capita growth in Germany is lower than ours, and Germany is an economic powerhouse, so we're doing better than them. But listen, let's talk about what may happen under a Labour government. Taxes are already historically high. The national debt is over £2 trillion. And last month, we borrowed £20 billion just to keep the lights on. Now, I'll throw you a bone. You're absolutely right, Sean. That is the Conservatives who have presided over that disaster. So how is Labour going to transform the country with no money to spend?
It's a massive, massive problem. And that is Labour's big problem. The economy is broken. The public services are broken. They've said they're not going to tax, and they won't. They've said they're not going to borrow money, and they won't. The fiscal situation is, as you've just described it, but obviously, I say obviously, it's widely assumed that they're going to come into office, and it's widely assumed that they're probably going to have a pretty good, comfortable majority. And I think the danger for Labour is that people will be saying, right, thank goodness, we finally got rid of the Tories. Now, over to you guys to really make things better. But it's going to be very, very difficult to make very much impact.
Most definitely. Sean, stay with us. Let me bring in my pundit, Benedict Spence, on this. Benedict, what's your reaction to what you've heard so far?
I mean, it's obviously going to be very difficult for the Labour Party. Because obviously one of the main things that they're trying to sell to people is the fact that there's the idea, rather, that they're going to run public services better than the Conservative Party. And obviously, given the mess that the Conservatives are leaving, that's not a difficult promise to sell them. However, I think Sean mentioned at the start, very importantly, that in his opinion, and certainly the opinion of many people, the economy is broken in this country. So Keir Starmer has said that one of his key ambitions is wealth creation. Well, you're not going to fix the economy or create more wealth by taxing people. And this is going to be the very delicate balancing act that the Labour Party have to make. They have to find a way of turbocharging the economy, getting growth growing, because whilst you say we're sort of doing well relative to the major economies in the world, actually Europe is in a bit of an economic slump, and the United States is ahead of us anyway. We can't compete with them, but actually in a sort of a broader scope, we're not doing particularly well. You do need to find a way, A, of turbocharging the economy so that you can increase tax takes down the line and pay down the debt so that you can fund the services, but also we need to find a way of getting people on the lowest rungs out of things like in-work benefits, because, of course, one of the major things that's afflicting people in this country is the suppression of wages. Actually, for a lot of people, wages have not kept pace with inflation at all. Wages have been kept very low, certainly at the bottom rung. And I think, ultimately, as much as the Labour Party would like to be sort of increasing taxes, and they always say, well, we're going to tax the rich, this is always the delicate thing. It's never the rich that are taxed, it's the middle classes, the engine of progress, that end up being taxed, because the rich, the super rich, who everybody likes the idea of bashing, have already long since moved their assets, the ones that can be got, offshore. Companies looking to invest in the UK abroad will be spooked by the idea of massive tax increases in this country, and that in itself is not going to help growth either.
Now, Sean Simon, Labour are very clear that a lot of their progressive plans to improve the country, which I'm sure come from the right place and are well motivated, will be achieved through economic growth. And I can support that. I think that's a fantastic policy. Grow, grow, grow. But how are Labour going to get the economy growing if they axe zero-hours contracts and saddle businesses with red tape and more workers' rights?
Well, because zero-hours contracts don't generate growth. If you look at high-performing countries like Germany, where if you, rather than measuring...
Is that the same Germany that has lower growth than us at the moment?
I've explained this thing about growth to you already once. Listen more carefully this time when I explain it again. Because growth here is at a very low base, because basically the Tories have made us poor, then it only takes a little bit of growth for it to start to seem like
No. I'm talking about future projections as well. Maria, get the slide ready. It's from the Big Opinion monologue, if you can. But listen, I understand Labour want to grow the economy, and I really support that. But how are they going to do it? By giving businesses red tape and boosting workers' rights, which mean they can go on strike, which is going to be ruinous for businesses, ruinous for the economy.
Because, as Benedict was just saying, actually paying people the lowest wages you can possibly pay with the worst conditions you can possibly give them is not the way to generate growth. The way to generate growth is by education, skills, upskilling the workforce, having a well-paid workforce with good conditions that wants to work and is motivated to help companies to succeed.
OK, well, listen, if Labour win, I do hope they're successful. But there's the graph, Sean. I don't want to be too pedantic. IMF GDP per capita G7 growth projections 2024 to 2019. And there is Britain in the red, in Labour red, if you like. I mean, is that graph not convincing enough?
It's not convincing enough, because what it doesn't tell you is how poor you are in the first place.
OK. Listen, Sean, we always love having you on the show. I hope you'll be back very soon. Thank you for being a good sport and helping us debate this important issue, given the fact that the polls would suggest a Labour government is coming. My thanks to Sean Simon there for a very spirited discussion on economic growth. What's your verdict? gbnews.com/your say. Coming up, has Sir Ed Davey insulted sub-postmasters with his election antics? As Post Office hero Alan Bates gets a knighthood, should Ed Davey lose his? I'll be asking former Lib Dem MP and leadership hopeful Mark Oaten next.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office. We're expecting heavy showers on Tuesday, but by the time we reach midweek, there'll be plenty of dry weather around, even some sunshine across most of the country. For the weekend, though, we have had low pressure draped across the UK, which has generally brought an unsettled picture, plenty of rain and showers. And it's this low pressure which is pushing this area of rain into northern parts of England by the time we reach this evening. Generally clearing across Scotland with a few showers creeping into the north, but across central areas and in the south, plenty of clear weather overnight, which means it's going to feel a little bit cooler. May even start to see some mist and fog develop by the time we reach Monday morning. And then across the north, generally milder, where that cloud sticks around. So to start on Monday, then, we are going to start to see some showers feed in across Scotland, which is pretty much the setup for the rest of the day. A little bit drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Northern England, just some spots of rain and drizzle, mainly across hills. But elsewhere, across central areas of the UK, southern parts of Wales and down across the south coast, there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start the day. Generally, though, Monday is going to be quite an unsettled day. Plenty of sunny spells and showers. The odd shower could be heavy at times as well in the northeast. May even hear the odd rumble of thunder. But generally across the south and southeast, it's going to be largely dry, and we'll even start to see some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. And that's where it is generally going to be warmest. Highs of 22, maybe even 23 Celsius, depending on how much sunshine we see. But elsewhere, temperatures generally around average, where that cloud sticks around. For Tuesday, then, once again, generally an unsettled day with those sunny spells and showers. These too could be heavy at times in the northeast. And the southeast catches the most of the driest weather as well, and that's where temperatures once again are going to be at their highest. Generally, though, from midweek onwards, turning drier with some sunshine. And that's it from me. Bye for now.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Well, I'll get to your feedback very shortly, but the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, has made headlines with his election campaign antics. However, a sub-postmaster who lost his livelihood in the Horizon scandal, someone that was actually made bankrupt, has accused Sir Ed of buffoonery for his stunt-laden activities. Lee Castleton, played by actor Will Mellor in the ITV drama, compared Sir Ed's photo opportunities to Boris Johnson, adding trust is never going to be built by paddleboarding in Cumbria. Sir Ed has been criticised for not doing more to help wrongly convicted sub-postmasters when he served as Postal Affairs Minister in the coalition government in 2010. He's previously apologised for failing to see through the Post Office's lies and has insisted that he's taking voters' concerns seriously despite campaign events, including a visit to a theme park and a ride on a water slide. Let's get the views of former Lib Dem MP and leadership hopeful Mark Oaten, whose highly entertaining podcast with Lembit Opik, the Very Liberal podcast, is out now. Mark, lovely to see you. Former newspaper editor Kelvin Mackenzie has said that in the week Post Office hero Alan Bates receives a knighthood, Sir Ed Davey should hand his back. Is he right?
No, I think he's totally wrong. Look, this is a very different situation from some of the individuals who were at the heart of the Post Office and who were covering events up. Sir Ed was in a government role. He asked the questions. He sadly was lied to, as were many others in this process. So it's not a case that Ed Davey has lied or covered up anything whatsoever at all. The only thing that sadly happened was that he was lied to. That said, he's apologised, and I think he recognises that this was a terrible mistake by many, many people for not probing further, deeper and harder at what they were being told by the Post Office.
I'm all for probing harder, but listen, Mark, let me say to you this, which is that this is a guy, Ed Davey, who refused a meeting with Alan Bates, who was a sub-postmaster that wrote directly to him when he was Post Office Minister saying, please meet me, let me tell you his story. No such meeting was granted. Also, it's not a minister's job to believe everything they're told. I've got a brilliant team around me, Mescana and Maria today, but they tell me things I still double-check.
Well, look, I think if you're a minister, and Mark, neither of us have been, and neither of us are likely ever to be.
Never say never.
Minister, you never know. You get literally thousands, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of letters coming through. I remember as a member of Parliament being bombarded with letters. You do have to take judgments when you're trying to answer all of that correspondence. And you do, when you're a minister, have to listen to civil servants and take advice. It is just literally impossible to personally investigate every single issue which comes your way. I'm sure that Ed regrets it, but I'm sure equally that many other ministers would also agree that it's impossible when you're being lied to actually get to the bottom of some of these issues.
And Mark, stay with us. Let me bring in my top pundits this evening, Benedict Spence, Emma Burnell and Susie Stride. Emma, do you think that this is sticking when it comes to Sir Ed Davey and his handling of the Post Office scandal?
I think that's the biggest attack line that is sticking on him, though I would say that I think Ed Davey has had a pretty good campaign. What he's managed to do, which is really, really hard as the third party, is kind of break through with these silly stunts, and everyone knows it's a silly stunt and you have a laugh, but then he kind of brings it into some of his more serious points around social care. It's impossible for the Lib Dems to get the kind of media coverage that parties who are going to be in government would get. So you can see why they have to do things a little differently. I think the sub-post officers, sub-postmasters and mistresses absolutely have a case to be angry with Ed Davey. He did fail. Lots of people failed. He wasn't the only one who failed, but he was one of them. He's high profile.
OK. Yeah, briefly, Benedict, will this scandal hurt Ed Davey on the 4th of July?
I don't think it will. I mean, first and foremost, I don't think he should lose his knighthood. I don't tend to trust Knights of the Realm unless there's a bit of scandal about them or there's a little bit of clownery about them. I'm old-fashioned like that. But I think having sort of positioned himself as still fundamentally the Lib Dems as the pro-Remain or Rejoin party, and with the Labour Party being rather reticent on that issue, Angela Rayner going on that debate a couple of days ago and saying absolutely not, the Labour Party would not be considering rejoining the European Union. I think he opens himself up to a large swathe of people who, even if they did feel slightly scandalised about the post-scandal, feel a little bit more strongly about that particular issue. I think he'll be fine come July the 4th.
Susie Stride, you've done plenty of campaigning in your time for the Labour Party. You continue to do so. What do you make of Ed Davey's campaign? Because this sub-postmaster, who was made bankrupt by the scandal, describes him as a Boris Johnson type. Do you think this kind of campaigning trivialises our politics?
Look, he's doing what he can do to get them into the limelight, which is what he needs to do, and that's like clever. It's good politics.
Is it clever, Susie?
Well, look, people are talking about him, and it's getting onto the news. My bigger problem with the Lib Dems is you can't trust them because, for me, they promised all this stuff in 2010, went in with the Tories. They were responsible for closing children's centres, libraries, youth clubs. You can't trust them. At least with the Tories say we're going to do this, and then they did it. With the Lib Dems, they promised all this stuff, then they went in with the Tories, and look what we got.
Okay.
I just don't think you can trust them. But anyway, that's my opinion.
OK, well, that's what this show's all about. Mark Oaten, you get the last word.
No, we don't.
Policies from the Lib Dems coming out. I would much rather the way Eddie's doing things than the way Keir Starmer and the Prime Minister are doing things. They're so cautious, they're so scared, they won't commit to do anything, they have no personalities. Good on Ed. He's showing he's got personalities and politics and policies as well.
Check out Mark Oaten's brand new podcast with Lembit Opik. It's very entertaining. It's called The Very Liberal Podcast, an entertaining look at the big political stories of the day. OK, folks, lots to get through. In my take at 10, Princess Kate, my verdict on her wonderful return. But next up, is the election now just damage limitation for the Tories? Could they drop to just 70 seats? I'll be asking former Conservative Minister and Liz Truss ally, Dame Jackie Doyle-Price, next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the Business Task Force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, and over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. We spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true.
You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, a shock new poll by Survation in the Sunday Times suggests the Conservatives could be reduced to near electoral extinction, possibly to as few as 72 seats. So are the Tories now playing Operation Damage Control? Let's get reaction from former Government Minister Dame Jackie Doyle-Price. Dame Doyle-Price, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us your reaction to this latest poll. You're not going to win the election now, are you? So is it damage limitation?
Well, I have to say to you, Mark, that this is an election like no other I've ever experienced, because we always expect for the governing party behind the polls. And as you've just articulated, this looks like near oblivion. But that's not my experience on the doors. It actually feels a lot softer than that. I mean, I think clearly if I was a betting woman, I'd be not putting money on the Conservatives to win a majority. I think that's fair to say. But I think the results that you've just shown from that poll are far from what will happen on the night.
OK, so you've still got the fight in you. I mean, what do you think you can achieve on the 4th of July, realistically, without making my viewers and listeners laugh?
Well, the good news for your viewers and listeners is that they're more than halfway through this election campaign. But what I would say is things can happen very quickly and they can turn on the head of a pin. From my perspective, you know, I've won 4 elections. I was only ever expected to win one of those 4. So we're used to it being a scrap here in Thurrock, and we just put one foot in front of the other. And as I say, I would say that really, I think there's a mood abroad that says that everyone's really annoyed with everyone. So there's not a positive swing towards the Labour Party. There is, you know, let's be frank, the last 5 years have had their ups and downs, and people are very frustrated with how the Conservative Party's behaved. And as a consequence, you know, along comes Nigel Farage to throw his sort of 2 pence in the mix, and people are getting, you know, sort of, well, who shall we pick? And that's where I think a lot of people are. People are still making up their minds. Now, obviously, postal votes have landed, so people are casting their votes already. But we are just going to carry on and put forward the message as best we can that, you know, if you want a government that allows you to keep more of what you earn and make more decisions yourself, then you should vote Conservative.
However, you'll have seen that well-publicised poll during the week that sees Reform UK symbolically edging ahead of the Conservatives. I'll grant you, Dame Doyle-Price, that was just an isolated poll, but significant nonetheless. So in that context, what is Nigel Farage doing right that Rishi Sunak is doing wrong?
Well, for a start, you're talking about him and the rest of the media is talking about him. You know, he's entered the race very late in the day and he's set it on fire because it's new and it's interesting. So I would expect this to be his high watermark in the polls, if I'm brutally frank. But the interesting thing about that poll is look at that Labour share of the vote, 37%. Now, really, if Labour were on for a landslide, they should be doing an awful lot better than that. They should not, 2.5 weeks before polling day, be falling back to 37% of the vote. They should be well ahead of 40%.
And Dame Jackie, let me talk to you about various aspects of the campaign so far. First of all, do you think that Rishi Sunak was right to call a July election?
Well, it's up to him with the advice of his cabinet. It wasn't the timing I was looking forward to. I was looking forward to the autumn, if I'm brutally frank. But, you know, that's a matter for him. We just have to make the best of it now. In one way or another, all your viewers and listeners will have a clear summer. So perhaps he's done them a favour.
Definitely. I hope you didn't have to cancel any summer holidays. Stay with us. Let me bring in, if I can, somebody that's clearly keen to have a Labour government, and that is my brilliant fellow pundit today. Susie is with us now. Susie, what do you have to say? What's your reaction to what Dame Jackie has just said?
Look, this election, there's a really clear choice. You want to vote Tory, then you're going to get sewage in your rivers and in your seas. You're going to have less police on the streets, crime rising. You're not going to have the 1.5 million homes that we desperately need, sorting out mortgages. I mean, Jackie, never met her, but, you know, complete respect, always want to respect opponents, but worked for Liz Truss. You know, the economy of this country has been devastated by the Tories, devastated. On the doors, people are afraid of the Tories and what they have done to this economy. And what I would say is mortgages for normal people have gone through the roof. Just on that, I'm not quite sure why anyone would be voting Conservative.
OK, Susie...
So, on all these different things, I think we've got a really clear choice here. And, I mean, I'm definitely not shocked by what I'm seeing on the doors. I'm definitely not shocked by seeing lifelong Tories voting Labour. It's making, you know, justice is being done.
Dame Jackie, over to you.
I mean, I'm not seeing lifelong Tories voting Labour at all. And I'll take you back to that poll. If that were true, you'd be on more than 37% vote share for the Labour Party. What Reform has done is actually bring another option for people who are irritated and frustrated by the Conservatives, somewhere else for them to go. And the truth is, there is no love for Labour, and that's why your poll share has gone down just as much as ours has, and Reform has surged.
Dame Jackie, I've heard about disarray at Conservative Party central office. Can you tell me about the mood of the campaign? Have the heads dropped?
No, I wouldn't put it like that. I mean, you know, there is a reason why the Conservative Party is the most successful electoral machine in the world, is because we just do get on with fighting elections. I think a lot of people were blindsided by the fact it was July, but we've all just got on with it. You know, we now know that, you know, ultimately we all know what we stand for and we believe in as Conservatives. We know there's a clear choice between having a Conservative government or a Labour one, and a vote for any one of the Conservatives does make a Labour landslide likely, and that's really the message we've got to get across.
Dame Jackie, briefly, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Last question. You worked under Liz Truss. It was a short stint. You were a minister in that government. I know you'd like it to have been a longer stint. Is the situation you find yourselves in as a party the fault of Liz Truss and those 44 days in Number 10?
No, I don't think it is. It goes back further than that. I mean, certainly what happened at that time, I mean, really, Liz was in as Prime Minister at a time when lots of things were catalysing in the economy that were a long time coming. And in that respect, she's more sinned against than sinning, in truth. The Bank of England should have raised interest rates a lot sooner than they did. But if your question is, when did the Conservative trouble start? I mean, it goes back further than that. You know, we were master of all we surveyed in 2019 after that general election. And that all changed at the time of the Owen Paterson vote, when the government was then seen to be one that would change the rules to support one of its own. And we just haven't recovered, because I think it's at that moment that the trust gets broken, in truth. So you have those moments in time. We've never recovered that. And that is really why I think why the voters are cross with us, because they expect better from a Conservative government. They expect better behaviour.
Dame Jackie, what a thrill to have you on the show. Enjoy the campaign. My thanks to Dame Jackie Doyle-Price. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Next up in My Take at 10, my response to the return of Princess Catherine. See you in 2.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office. We're expecting heavy showers on Tuesday, but by the time we reach midweek, there'll be plenty of dry weather around, even some sunshine across most of the country. For the weekend, though, we have had low pressure draped across the UK, which has generally brought an unsettled picture, plenty of rain and showers. And it's this low pressure which is pushing this area of rain into northern parts of England by the time we reach this evening. Generally clearing across Scotland with a few showers creeping into the north, but across central areas, areas, and in the south, plenty of clear weather overnight, which means it's going to feel a little bit cooler. May even start to see some mist and fog develop by the time we reach Monday morning. And then across the north, generally milder, where that cloud sticks around. So to start on Monday, then, we are going to start to see some showers feed in across Scotland, which is pretty much the setup for the rest of the day. A little bit drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Northern England, just some spots of rain and drizzle, mainly across hills. But elsewhere, across central areas of the UK, southern parts of Wales and down across the south coast, there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start the day. Generally, though, Monday is going to be quite an unsettled day. Plenty of sunny spells and showers. The odd shower could be heavy at times as well in the northeast. May even hear the odd rumble of thunder. But generally across the south and southeast, it's going to be largely dry, and we'll even start to see some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. And that's where it is generally going to be warmest. Highs of 22, maybe even 23 Celsius, depending on how much sunshine we see. But elsewhere, temperatures generally around average, where that cloud sticks around. For Tuesday, then, once again, generally an unsettled day with those sunny spells and showers. These too could be heavy at times in the northeast, and the southeast catches the most of the driest weather as well, and that's where temperatures once again are going to be at their highest. Generally, though, from midweek onwards, turning drier with some sunshine. And that's it from me. Bye for now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still time to win our Summer Spectacular with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's midday. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on TV, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan tonight, and we kick off a busy hour with some excellent news, which is that England have beaten Serbia in the Euros 1-0. Jude Bellingham has scored, and what it means is that England are now top of Group C after Denmark and Slovenia drew earlier on Saturday. So we're off to winning ways, folks. Let me tell you, it's coming home, football's coming home. We are on our merry way. We've got momentum. Come on, England. So that's fantastic news. We will bring you reaction throughout the hour to this victory, what it means for our chances. I'm delighted to say that we'll be joined by TV news legend and Manchester United superfan Michael Crick. Plus, the story will feature in tomorrow's papers. Also tonight in My Take at 10, the glorious return of Princess Catherine proves why Britain will never be a republic. This remarkable woman could save the monarchy single-handedly. She is the ultimate queen in waiting. Plus tonight, you'll love this, an explosive war of words has broken out between David Cameron and Nigel Farage. Plus, Rishi Sunak has revealed his religion of Hinduism has helped him during his time as Prime Minister. So is faith an important factor in politics? I'll be asking former government minister and practicing Christian Anne Widdecombe. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages. A packed show, lots to get through. Anne Widdecombe waiting in the wings. More details about England's fantastic 1-0 victory in the Euros. But first, the headlines. Here's Sam.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening to you. It's just after 10 o'clock and as we were hearing there, it has been a tense night in the stadium in Western Germany and across England's bars and pubs. But they've done it. England have just beaten Serbia in the squad's Euro 2024 opener. As soon as the final whistle went, the fan zone in Wembley erupted with cheers, so much so the picture there on your TV is blurry. These are the live pictures, though, coming to us from London, where hundreds of supporters are now celebrating that win after England got their Euro 2024 campaign off to a winning start. As Mark mentioned, Jude Bellingham scored the only goal of the game in a 1-0 victory against Serbia. Well, earlier, police in Gelsenkirchen arrested at least 7 Serbian football fans after clashes with England supporters. Riot police were seen moving in to separate the groups after fighting broke out there. And just hours earlier, police shot a man in Hamburg ahead of another Euros match. This was the moment that shots were fired at the attacker, who was seen armed with an axe. Officers say the suspect was also carrying a Molotov cocktail, which he tried to light before approaching police officers. The attacker is now being treated for his injuries. In other news tonight, an appeal has been launched for a man suspected of killing a child in a hit-and-run in Coventry. Police are trying to find 21-year-old Dolan Alexanders, who's wanted on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. 12-year-old Keaton Slater was hit by a black BMW just after 4:30 on Friday afternoon. Police now urging anyone with information to come forward. A police officer who drove his car into a cow has now been removed from his frontline duties. A warning, the video up next does contain some images of the injured animal. Surrey Police has started an internal investigation into the incident and has referred itself to the police complaints watchdog. The animal's owner has also called for the officer to lose his job. Election news, and the Tories are being warned that they face possible extinction, with polling firm Savanta saying time is close to running out for the Prime Minister. In a separate poll for the Times newspaper, Savation says the Conservatives could have their lowest ever vote share under Rishi Sunak's leadership, predicting the party will win just 72 seats in next month's election. It's also forecasting that Labour is on course to take 456 seats, surpassing the 1997 landslide, and Reform expected to get 7 seats. Ukraine has been told the European Union will stand by the country for as long as it takes to secure peace. The majority of 90 countries to take part in a 2-day summit in Switzerland have signed that final declaration calling for nuclear plants and ports to be secured under Ukraine's control. for food not to be weaponised and for all prisoners of war to be released. And finally, before we hand back to Mark, some royal news for you. Prince William's 3 children have wished him a happy Father's Day today with a message on social media saying, "We love you, Papa." It was posted alongside a photo of the Prince of Wales standing on a beach with his arms around Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis in Norfolk. Well, earlier, the Prince of Wales also shared his own throwback photo to celebrate Father's Day. It was taken in 1984 when William was just a toddler himself. He was seen playing football with his dad in the photo in the gardens of Kensington Palace. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome to Mark Dolan. Tonight in My Take at 10, the glorious return of Princess Catherine, my reaction. Also, an explosive war of words has broken out between David Cameron and Nigel Farage. Plus, Rishi Sunak has revealed his religion of Hinduism has helped him during his time as Prime Minister. So is faith an important factor in politics? I'll be asking former government minister and practising Christian Anne Widdecombe. And great news, England have beaten Serbia 1-0 in Germany. So you can see the fans celebrating. I think we're heading over to a live picture of what's happening. But let me tell you that we'll be going to football fanatic, Manchester United superfan Michael Crick in the last word. Plus, we'll get all the latest on the election highs and lows. And tomorrow's newspaper front pages and my top pundits this evening, Benedict Spence, Emma Burnell and Susie Stride. A packed hour. Those papers are coming. Come on, England! 1-0. It's coming home, folks. But first, my take at 10. In the spirit of political balance at this time, I think it's fair to say there's no great excitement about any of the possible outcomes for the general election. Faith in politics is low, and the Don't Know candidate forming a Don't Know government for the Don't Know party would probably be the most popular in a century. It's a great irony, therefore, that the public figures for whom we have the most affection are the ones that we do not choose, namely the royal family. Yes, the idea of a monarchy is a little eccentric, a handful of genetic lottery winners gifted untold riches, fame and privilege by accident of birth. But like many other aspects of British life, including our constitution, our judiciary and our parliament, it may have a few odd traditions. It may seem strange on paper, arcane, dusty, perhaps out of date, a bit mad even, but ultimately it works. Aside from a small rabble of dissenters who would like a republic, the royal family enjoy astonishing levels of popularity. An Ipsos poll taken in May reveals that almost half of Britons believe that the UK would be worse off without a monarchy. That was up from 38% in March. Any politician would only dream of those numbers. As we saw during Queen Elizabeth's funeral, when Brits of all backgrounds went to Westminster to pay their respects, this ancient institution enjoys widespread support. Even Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield did everything they could to catch a glimpse of the coffin. And astonishingly, this rich and, let's be honest, not remotely diverse family is incredibly effective at bringing together and binding our diverse nation. And the reason why is history. In this increasingly transactional commercial world, that is something that you can't buy. For those looking down their nose on the monarchy, perhaps they'd like to browse through photographs of the late Queen Mother navigating the rubble of wartime London, offering support and words of understanding for Brits whose homes had just been bombed out during the Blitz. The royal family have been the nation's rock in peace and in war. And whatever we've been through as a country, the royals have gone through it with us. Most keenly reflected in that image of the Queen sat alone in a chapel, socially distanced, having just buried her husband Philip at the height of the pandemic and during those ludicrous lockdowns. Even our late great Queen had to comply with the madness. And like any family, the royals have to go through all of the same problems as the rest of us. Yes, they don't have to worry about the cost of heating their homes, putting food on the table, or getting the very best medical care. But as we've seen over the years, they too have battled family strife, brothers at war, disruptive sister-in-laws, dodgy uncles bringing embarrassment on the family, squabbles over who lives where, financial battles, births, marriages, deaths and divorce. And of course, latterly, ill health. If anyone was in any doubt about the relevance and importance of the royal family to this country, that was quickly dismissed with the instant and deep outpouring of concern following the double nightmare of both King Charles and Princess Catherine's cancer diagnoses. Which is why, to see the return of Princess Catherine into the spotlight yesterday and the King fulfilling his public duties was joyous. But it was joyous and bittersweet. Yes, it was a reminder of how loved they are and also how important they are, but also a reminder that they are mortal and tragically continue to battle this serious disease. Last night, a guest on the show, our brilliant US royal reporter Kinsey Schofield, made a brilliant point about cancer.
Cancer brings people closer.
Yeah.
And you did feel that way, even looking at Prince George admiring his mother and father on the balcony.
Cancer does indeed bring people closer, and it's clearly had that effect on the royal family, with Charles and his son William closer than ever, and William and his wife Catherine still deeply, dizzyingly in love. But this double blow of Catherine and Charles being ill has brought the nation together too, which is the default mechanism of our monarchy, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, in good times and bad. This unique family represent and embody the nation, its values, its principles, its history. Given that an elected head of state would probably be a clapped-out ex-politician or celebrity, for example, President Tony Blair, President Piers Morgan, President Gary Lineker, then I think we should count our blessings. Looking at the scenes yesterday at the balcony in Buckingham Palace, a republic has never felt further away. In these divided times, when we've been split over issues like Brexit, the pandemic and now the election, the royal family is above all of that. It is devoid of tribal politics. It's a constant, and it provides the bedrock and foundations of our nation. Politicians will come and go, but the royal family are here to stay. They will always have the people's vote. Your reaction to yesterday's massive royal celebration. gbnews.com/your say. First up, tonight's top pundits, political commentator Benedict Spence, journalist and broadcaster Emma Burnell, and Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Benedict, let me start with you. We have never felt further away from being a republic in my lifetime.
I think that's more or less right. I think there would be perhaps a stronger argument for it were our political system more broadly in a better state. But I think, by and large, I think people have lost trust with politicians. I think that that's reflected in the fact that there isn't even particularly great love for the Labour Party and Sir Keir Starmer, even though he's on course to win a staggering majority. People aren't doing it through the sort of adulation that even, Tony Blair got to a certain degree when he was elected in 97. I think people have completely fallen out of love with our political class. And perhaps that shouldn't be the best argument for a monarchy, but it certainly seems to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting at the moment. And I think when you juxtapose that with the fact that the royal family, I think, have been rather savvy when it comes to what causes to sort of pursue, be it house building or the environment in the case of the King, or mental health and homelessness in the case of the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall, of Wales. Then actually I think they're on a very steady trajectory in a way that democratic politics doesn't necessarily allow your politicians to maintain.
Emma Burnell, the case for a monarchy has never been stronger.
There's a difference between the case for a monarchy, which, I mean, as you said in your own monologue, is a bit bizarre, and the case for the current situation not changing. You can take the theoretical argument, which I believe in. I'm no monarchist. I've never being a monarchist, I don't think we should have an inherited head of state. I just don't think anyone should be gifted that privilege through a random birthright. But I also think that it's not going to change in the next few years. I mean, never say never. I think Benedict's point is right about the difference between where the royal family are and where there's a certain sense that people aren't particularly politically engaged. But that also means that if the latter changes, it might well change the former too.
OK. Susie Stride, the alternative to a monarchy is a clapped-out ex-politician or celebrity. President Tony Blair, President Piers Morgan, President Gary Lineker.
I mean, personally, I'm all for President Gary Lineker. Anyone else?
He's already got the ears. He's perfect for it.
Great footballer. I mean, look, this is where
You're on your own on that one, Susie.
I'm going to be honest. I find it tricky. Like, I really loved the Queen. When she passed away, I went all the way up there with my child and, you know, and whatnot.
Did you have VIP tickets like Holly and Phil?
I didn't get any of those VIP tickets. I could have queued, but I didn't queue, but I could have. But anyway, got a lot of love. And also Prince William and Kate. I love all their work on mental health, and because I work with kids with mental health needs, so I love all of that. However, I think sometimes you've got to step back and look at the bigger picture. How can these people be privileged by blood? There's nothing good about that. You know, yeah, they do their duties, but we could get a family from the East End of London and stick them in Buckingham Palace, and I think they'll do their duties for that money. I think you get, you know, a family from Newcastle to do their duties pretty well as well. And so my thing would be, what makes them different? What, because someone 200 years ago cut someone else's head off? I don't get it. So I genuinely do think that we're a really logical country, a really rational country. And so though emotionally I love the idea of, massively respect the Queen, really like Prince William and Kate, and love what they're doing on mental health and all that kind of stuff. So I've got this strange thing, but at the same time I'm like, guys, like, really, what makes them any different to Benedict or Emma or... Let's not say me, but do you know what I mean?
OK.
So, I really do think, that, you know, we've got to think about that. You know, privilege by blood.
Well, I'll give you that. I do think that Benedict is a lot better dressed than the Prince of Wales, and Emma Burnell a lot more glamorous than most of the royal family. So listen, folks, we'll debate that, but what do you think? I think the case for the monarchy has never been stronger. gbnews.com/your say. Next up, an explosive war of words has broken out between David Cameron and Nigel Farage. Plus, Rishi Sunak has revealed his religion of Hinduism has helped him during his time as Prime Minister. So is faith an important factor in politics? I'll be asking Anne Widdecombe next.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
98-year-old veteran Ken Cook shared his memories of D-Day at a special event in Harrogate. As a former Green Howards private, Ken was part of an armada of vessels carrying more than 150,000 Allied soldiers to France. And he was just a teenager when his regiment landed on Gold Beach in Normandy.
Everybody was telling us, the officers and the sergeants, corporals, they're telling, get off the beach, lads, quick, because there's some more stuff coming behind us. And they had to get onto the beach as well. All our equipment and tanks and whatever, artillery, they were following up behind us. So we had to get out of the way and get into the countryside and make as much ground as we could on that first day.
Ken survived that harrowing first day, but many didn't. Around 10,000 Allied troops were either killed or injured. But their sacrifice, along with the bravery of those that lived, changed the course of history and resulted in the end of World War II.
Because somebody had to do it, and so we did it. We did our job, and that's it.
Ken is one of the last surviving members of York's Normandy veterans. Part of an ever-dwindling band of brothers who fought on D-Day, he's attending the 80th commemoration in France.
A very emotional occasion this time because there's not many of us left now.
Remembering the fallen, Ken's wish is that long after he's gone, we still never forget those who gave their tomorrow for our today.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
It's time for the Newsmaker, and an extraordinary war of words has broken out between Foreign Secretary David Cameron and Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, with David Cameron describing Farage as a divisive, inflammatory figure who is not welcome in the Conservative Party. Producer Maria is furious. Meanwhile, writing for the Telegraph newspaper today, Nigel Farage has shot back, saying David Cameron is smug, complacent and snobby, and a disgrace to Britain. So who's going to win this battle? Well, let's speak to another political titan and someone that's no stranger to a political dust-up, former government minister and broadcaster Anne Widdecombe. Anne, what do you make of this standoff? Is it handbags at dawn?
Oh, I think it's probably swords at dawn. I think it's probably getting quite violent. I know both these men. I worked with Cameron for a while in Parliament. I know that Cameron is smug and he is snobby and he is dismissive of people who don't share his views. He is all of those things. I can absolutely say that of my own observation, not of anything I've read or heard. And by contrast, Nigel says, sometimes people don't like it, but he says exactly what he thinks. And I think people are now so fed up with the Parliament that they've got. They're so utterly fed up. They're yearning for somebody who just says it as it is, says what he thinks rather than what he thinks you want to hear him say, which is something very different. And so I think Nigel will win this one. I think he's already winning this one.
But speaking of winning, Anne, hasn't David Cameron achieved far more in his political career than Nigel Farage, given that he's been Prime Minister and an MP, neither of which has been achieved by Nigel?
Well, you've left out two important words there, so far.
Do you think Nigel Farage could become Prime Minister at some point?
Well, I would like to think so. But the crucial thing is to keep our eyes at the moment and our aims on this election. And in making sure that now that we have overtaken the Conservatives in at least one poll, making sure that we go on and that we build on that. Because the truth is, we're the Conservatives now. There are no Conservatives in Parliament. David Cameron certainly isn't a Conservative in any recognisable form.
Of course, I should stress that the Conservatives will argue they have a very conservative agenda. They're going to stop the boats, they're going to reduce immigration and cut taxes. But Anne, of course, you're chuckling away. You're entitled to do that. Listen,
no,
you dropped... Go on.
I'm entitled to ask. I don't want to hear what they're going to do. My question is, why haven't they already done it? You know, it's Sunak. Talk about stop the boats. What a joke. Sunak has spent 2 years with no plan B, putting all his hopes on Rwanda, which still hasn't happened. And he's got the gall to say to us, trust me, I'll stop the boats. I know he won't.
However, Anne, Nigel Farage can say that he's going to stop the boats, end wokery and cut taxes because he's not going to be Prime Minister. He's not going to win power. He will be lucky to win the seat in which he's campaigning. This is fantasy politics, isn't it?
Oh, no, it isn't. I mean, for a start, we're not going to go from naught to government overnight. We know that. We're not going to be the government in power after the general election. For heaven's sake, of course not. But what we can do is take over from the Tories as opposition, both as effective opposition and then later as actual opposition. We can do that. And, you know, when we say, as Reform says, it's not just Nigel, that we will stop the boats, and we put forward a plan to do it, and just eye in the sky. When we say we'll do that, I think people believe that, yes, if we get half a chance, we will So I would say, give us the chance.
And what are the circumstances in which Nigel Farage might eventually become Prime Minister?
Well, if you want to build scenarios, and I'd much rather deal with today's reality than tomorrow's possibilities, but the scenario would be that the Conservatives are very badly wiped out this time, that they don't get their act together, and that would be in keeping with the last few years. They just don't get their act together. Then I think people will look to say, well, where is the common sense party? And it's reform.
And what would you say to those watching or listening who consider Nigel Farage to be a dangerous and divisive man who has done untold damage to this country?
Well, the electorate apparently doesn't agree.
Short and sweet. Now, Anne, can we talk about the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister for now at least? He's told the Sunday Times how his faith in the Hindu religion has helped him during his time as Prime Minister. How important is religious faith in politics, would you say?
Well, I think if you have faith, it's going to be massively important because it will affect everything you do, and therefore it will affect your attitude towards your politics as well. And of course, faith gives you strength, faith gives you confidence, faith is there when times are bad. So I can well believe that Rishi has drawn comfort from his faith, as I do from mine. But it's fair to say there are politicians who do not have that level of faith. But who, find their confidence elsewhere. But I personally, I would say faith every time.
The language in the Times headline was notable. It said that Rishi Sunak admits to his religious faith. Does that imply there's something wrong with having faith? Do you think there's a sneering attitude towards religion these days, Anne?
That's exactly what it implies. And that certainly sums up the attitude of the chattering classes and of the metropolitan elite. Absolutely sums it up. You admit to having faith. There was a time when you'd have been embarrassed to admit to not having any. And yes, there's a sneering attitude, there's a patronising attitude, and that word admits, I'm amazed it got through the editor, quite honestly, because it says it all.
Now, Anne, I think you're away next week. We're going to miss you hugely. You are irreplaceable. But let's have a look at the calendar. We'll just fire that up. I think you will be with us virtually on the eve of the election. You'll be back on the 30th of June, days away from polling day, at which point we'll have an awful lot to discuss. So, Anne, thank you for joining us. Have a good week off, and we'll catch you 2 weeks today. My thanks to former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe. Congratulations to England, who have beaten Serbia in the Euros. We'll bring full reaction from TV News legend and Manchester United superfan Michael Crick. That's next, plus tomorrow's papers with full pundit reactions. See you in 2.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. We're expecting heavy showers on Tuesday, but by the time we reach midweek, there'll be plenty of dry weather around, even some sunshine across most of the country. For the weekend, though, we have had low pressure draped across the UK, which has generally brought an unsettled picture, plenty of rain and showers. And it's this low pressure which is pushing this area of rain into northern parts of England by the time we reach this evening. Generally clearing across Scotland with a few showers creeping into the north, but across central areas and in the south, plenty of clear weather overnight, which means it's going to feel a little bit cooler. May even start to see some mist and fog develop by the time we reach Monday morning. And then across the north, generally milder, where that cloud sticks around. So to start on Monday, then, we are going to start to see some showers feed in across Scotland, which is pretty much the setup for the rest of the day. A little bit drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Northern England, just some spots of rain and drizzle, mainly across hills. But elsewhere, across central areas of the UK, southern parts of Wales and down across the south coast, there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start the day. Generally, though, Monday is going to be quite an unsettled day, plenty of sunny spells and showers. The odd shower could be heavy at times as well in the northeast, may even hear the odd rumble of thunder. But generally across the south and southeast, it's going to be largely dry, and we'll even start to see some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. And that's where it is generally going to be warmest, highs of 22, maybe even 23 Celsius, depending on how much sunshine we see. But elsewhere, temperatures generally around average, where that cloud sticks around. For Tuesday then, once again, generally an unsettled day with those sunny spells and showers. These too could be heavy at times in the northeast, and the southeast catches the most of the driest weather as well, and that's where temperatures once again are going to be at their highest. Generally though, from midweek onwards, turning drier with some sunshine. And that's it from me. Bye for now.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Reaction in just a moment to England's excellent 1-0 victory in the Euros against Serbia. We'll be joined by TV news legend and Manchester United superfan Michael Crick. But first, tomorrow's front pages. OK, we'll start with the I newspaper. Labour accused of watering down housing reform pledges. A U-turn? Surely not. Labour criticised for rowing back on reforms to protect renters and boost home ownership. Party manifesto pledges to increase support for first-time buyers, boost the number of affordable homes and introduce greater protections for people in the rented sector. But analysis of the manifesto reveals that the detailed plans originally set out in its National Policy Forum document have since been watered down. Changes include omitting a target of increasing home ownership to 70%. Instead, a more general pledge to boost the amount of homeowners, a target to build 1.5 million homes and support 80,000 first-time buyers with mortgage guarantee schemes. OK, folks, well, that's the I. Let's head now to the Guardian newspaper. New calls on Starmer to discard the Tories' two-child benefits limit. Keir Starmer is facing renewed pressure to scrap the two-child benefit limits, as new research reveals that 250,000 more children will be hit by the policy over the next year alone. Also, staggering inequality in schools' green space. Children at the top 250 English private schools have access to more than 10 times as much outdoor space as those who go to state schools, according to exclusive Guardian analysis. Bellingham gets England off to a winning start is the other story in the Guardian and the Metro. And they lead with Gordon Ramsay's cycling nightmare. I'm battered and bruised, but still alive. Gordon Ramsay displayed a horrendous bruise from a cycling accident as he told fans that wearing a helmet saved his life. Well, we wish him a speedy recovery. I'm sure he did a bit of swearing when he fell off that bike. But he is a great guy, and I hope he feels better soon. OK, let's get reaction to all of those front pages with my top pundits this evening. Political commentator Benedict Spence, journalist and broadcaster Emma Burnell, and a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight, Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Lots of stories to get through. But how about this, Susie? You might need to do some defending here. The I newspaper, Labour accused of watering down housing reform pledges. It's a U-turn already, and they haven't even won yet.
I mean, it's not. This is just the way the newspaper is painting this. Ultimately, Labour get into power, we're going to build 1.5 million new homes. We're going to build new towns, which is fantastic. We're going to, what do they call it, the grey belt? We're going to explore building on the grey belt, like wasteland and car parks, and also helping people with their mortgages. I mean, look, I'm one of those people that couldn't get your foot on the housing ladder, and by miracle, we were able to, but like lots of people can't. And we don't, we can do better as a country. We can do better than this. And so, yes, this is a great headline for someone that wants to kind of, twist actually what's going on here, the reality of what's going on here is we've had 14 years of actually devastation to the housing market, and the landscape of the housing market is about to change. And it's going to change for the better. And actually people need hope at the moment. And, you know, I think Labour is actually offering hope when it comes to, housing.
Are you not worried about Keir Starmer's history of U-turns, which have happened without the pressure of daily office? Do you not think he'll be very indecisive and flaky should he become Prime Minister?
What do we mean by U-turns? Any great leader... Look, I change my mind on things. I actually think it's a sign of a great leader that you change your mind on things.
Well, he campaigned for Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister. I mean, that's a bit of a U-turn,
Can I just say
it?
something? All of us, OK, that were in the Labour Party at the time, we just had to get on with what was an appalling environment.
But lots of Labour frontbenchers stepped down, which Keir Starmer did not.
Do you know what Keir Starmer
And are they leader of the Labour Party?
Yeah,
no.
You know what Keir Starmer did? Keir Starmer will go down as Neil Kinnock, who I've got so much love and respect for. He got us out of the hard left mess, and actually
even though we tried to get that mess elected.
History will look upon Keir Starmer and say, you saved the Labour Party, which was good for democracy. Whether you're right wing, left wing, any wing, they're clapping him and saying, well done, because you got that hard left. And some of it was, you know, the anti-Semitic stuff, that so much of it was damaging.
But he campaigned for that hard left for a couple of years.
No, do you know what? I actually just think he did what he needed to do to get to the position for us to get to this position. And sometimes that's what you have to do.
How did he know that was going to happen? He's not Mystic Meg, is he?
No, he's not Mystic Meg. I just think, look, you know, history tells us Neil Kinnock stood up at Labour Party conference and he dealt with the hard left. And we will look at him and say, you're a hero, Neil Kinnock, you're the hero. And Keir Starmer has done that job now. And so, to be honest, we're all going to be eternally grateful to him.
But I have to be honest with you, Emma Burnell, I've got plenty of viewers and listeners who don't trust Keir Starmer because of the number of times that he's changed his mind. So you're looking at these housing targets and they're thinking, sounds great, why should I believe it?
Well, what I really like, actually, about this story is what's hidden beneath it. Labour hasn't changed the target of the number of houses it's building. It's changed the 70% home ownership target. What that means is much more mixture of tenure, which includes social housing, which is what we desperately, desperately need more of in this country. I am very happy with that as a story, frankly.
OK, what do you think about this? Will Labour fix the UK housing crisis, Benedict?
I don't think they will, and if they do, then they'll be taking a very huge gamble, because one of the major obstacles, actually, that we're not really discussing to house building, which is a serious anchor drag on growth, is the public. It's the voters. It's the people who, on the one hand, say we want there to be growth, but also very regularly vote against any sort of building developments in their local constituencies, and that is a very large part of the problem. And one of the things that the Labour Party is going to face when they get all these new MPs in who realise that their victory is effectively, it's built on sand. It's not built on any sort of great ideological desire to see a Labour government. It's built on just a desire not to see the Conservatives and for there to be something new. They are going to have to try, where possible, not to upset those voters, because if things start to go south very quickly, which for reasons outside of the control of the Labour Party, I think they probably will. The economic situation of this country is not good, and it's not going to improve overnight, and that's largely for broader geopolitical reasons. However, they aren't going to want to then upset the people who have put them in, especially if those people were not particularly motivated by the idea of a Labour government in the first place. Now, one of the things that has been mooted is that Sir Keir Starmer will try to force through building developments in some places, often against the wills of local councils and local voters. How will those people react then in 5 years' time if the Labour Party come in and are seen to be going against, which is, you know, the general attitude of the British voting public, which is that we need more houses and we need absolutely no houses near me. That is the great sort of the double standard that voters in this country have had for a very long time. It's one of the major issues that the Conservatives encountered, and it is something that is going to be encountered by the Labour Party as well. They might be able to overcome that if they can make progress on other areas, but I don't see how they're going to be able to do this, and it is necessary, without making some rather uncomfortable decisions that might lose them voters in the process.
And Emma Burnell, the I newspaper, let's be honest, is pretty favourable towards the Labour Party, and they're already exposing what they consider to be a mini U-turn from the leader of the opposition. What about this in The Guardian? New calls on Starmer to discard the Tories' two-child benefits limit. The civil war has already begun, hasn't it?
Well, I would say I would dispute your characterisation of the eye where it is now. It seems to be a little bit all over the place. It is owned, I believe, by a Conservative peer. Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing on the two-child benefit cap is real. That is a live discussion within the party. I think they should scrap it, frankly. It doesn't save enough money for the pain that it causes. And I totally get that they're being ultra cautious and don't want to make any spending commitments. But sometimes you do have to nail your colours to the mast. I think child poverty
But this means that the Labour movement is not united around this important flagship policy, and we haven't had the election yet. It's not a good sign, is it?
Look, people in political parties disagree more at 11. Come on. The Labour Party is incredibly united behind wanting to get into government. There will be then discussions about what we do when we get there. But frankly, I think, though, that the idea that we're anywhere like as disunited as the Conservatives is for the birds.
OK, listen, today is an awful anniversary because it marks 8 years since the tragic murder of Labour MP Jo Cox. This after the murder of Sir David Amess in 2021. Nigel Farage, just a couple of weeks ago, was doused with milkshake and last week pelted with rocks. And, of course, Labour candidate Rosie Duffield has said she won't be going to election hustings, given her own safety is at risk because she has stood up for women's rights. Do we need to do more, Susie, to protect our politicians?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, look, I think one of the things that makes this country great is that we have, we respect each other. Now, I don't agree with Nigel Farage, but I respect, there's got to be that level of respect. We do not behave in this way. What is going on at the moment with Rosie is another level. I mean, I am disgusted with what is going on with Rosie at the moment. And, look, there are bigger arguments here about regulation of social media, and I don't have the expertise to say what needs to be done on that. But ultimately, as I say, one of the things that, I love about this country is actually this kind of freedom to speak about things. We may not agree, we may disagree, but even if we disagree, I'm going to let you speak, And, I've run for election against Robert Halfon, and there was this respect between us, And so I'm just, I'm deeply concerned by this, and I think we need to deal with, people would call some of the behaviour against Rosie like fascist behaviour, actually.
Yeah.
And I think we need to come down hard on it, and, I don't know fully the answers, but I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah, most definitely. Emma, do you think that MPs, for example, should have 24/7 police protection, an armed bodyguard, for example?
God, I wish I didn't think that. I wish I didn't think that, because one of the things I love about British democracy and the difference between the way that it works and the way it works in, say, for example, the United States, is MPs are normal. They're like you and me. They pop into Tesco for a bag of crisps. They are rooted in their communities. And the more that we find that we need this kind of security, the worse that is. Look, Susie's walked the walk. She's actually stood. I'm just talking the talk. But there are times when I've felt my safety threatened because I've said things that are not, like, online in particular, people have really gone for me. And I am worried sometimes that will come offline. But in no way have I gone through what I'm sure Susie went through in Harlow when she stood. I just think it's really, really important that we do not allow our political differences, however passionately we feel them, to teeter over into political violence and then separate our politics from our people.
Most definitely. Briefly, if you can, Benedict, I remember when I was about 18 and I went into a pub in Westminster, long story, and John Prescott was in there having a pint. I think at the time he was Deputy Prime Minister. We still want that accessibility, don't we? But it looks like it's in peril.
Well, of course we do. But, it's interesting that Emma says we have a different democratic tradition to the United States, but we do live culturally downstream of the United States. And a large part of that is because we share the same language. And we do, for better and often for worse, import a lot of their cultural and political talking points. And you have to say a lot of the so-called culture war talking points in this country have been accompanied by a real, I think, intolerance that is pervasive across US political culture. And we need to do our level best, actually, whatever the culture war issues themselves are, to stamp out that kind of behaviour where it is tolerated, that actually they are not your political opponents. opponents. They are your ideological enemies, and you must crush your enemies. That's what you see in the United States now. We do not want it here.
Absolutely right. Well, let me tell you, I love America, but I don't think we should become America. Coming up, more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, The Telegraph and The Mail. Plus, I'm delighted to say that England have won 1-0, their first game in the Euros. They've beaten Serbia. We'll get reaction from TV news legend and Manchester United superfan Michael Crick next.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Well, the first thing we've got is obviously D-Day, which was so moving that I think everybody was crying. You see these wonderful old people who gave their lives, and they were crying to remember it all. You see tears in the King's eyes. You saw Camilla, the Queen, crying. And I think, gosh, you know, actually Britain's maybe opening up, and we're not sort of stiff upper lip all the time anymore. I think that William was so dignified.
Oh, he's amazing, isn't he?
And he was the young king. And I thought he was brilliant. He must have been heartbroken that he couldn't have his wife with him. And one of the people who knocks us on the head now and then is Harry. He got the green light to appeal to the appeal. It's a third one, and he wants to make sure that the government gives him protection all the time, automatically. One of the reasons is that he's going away with Meghan for a tour, world tour, which made my heart sort of pump, because this is going to be another copy of what the royal family is like. And he wants to be covered. Well, it's not on our tax, frankly.
So the British public would pay for this?
Yes, yes. It's a joke, isn't it? And he also said he wanted it all done by the end of the month, June, and the judge said he doesn't deserve that. He's not in that VIP category. So he was sort of put in his place, but I don't think he can believe that. And the other thing is the wonderful wedding yesterday. And one of the things I loved, there was a wedding dress, but also I loved the blue velvet shoes. William again was wonderful.
Yeah.
He was absolutely wonderful. He was ushering everyone around, which seems funny for an heir to the throne, and actually would jump in the bus that was taking them to the celebration.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
OK, let's have some more front pages. James, what have you got for me? Let's have a look at the Telegraph. Labour's net zero plans contain a £4.5 billion tax black hole. Labour's ban on new North Sea oil and gas will create a £4.5 billion black hole in the public finances that will have to be filled by higher taxes, the Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho has warned. Tony Blair, I get trans rights, but women's spaces must be secure. Hey Jude, Jude Bellingham has got England off to a winning start in the Euros, 1-0. And NATO is in talks to deploy more nuclear weapons, says Alliance Chief. Next up, Mail. Has Labour let the cat out of the bag on tax? Labour's manifesto is not the sum total of its spending plans, where Streeting has conceded. The Times. Go for the jugular, Sunak urged. Ministers say personal attacks on Starmer are the only option, as polls point to a catastrophic defeat. And the Daily Star. The hangover. 1 million footy fans pull a sickie tomorrow after downing 30 million pints and one or two baby shams as England beat Serbia 1-0. I'll get reaction to that fantastic victory from Michael Crick in just a moment. But, Susie, can I just ask you about this story in The Guardian? Staggering inequality in schools' green space. Children at the top 250 English private schools have access to more than 10 times as much outdoor space as those who go to state schools. This is according to exclusive research from The Guardian.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm big on sport. I play football, I play rugby. I think sport changes lives. I think hopefully over the next 10 years, we're actually going to see a shift in sport taking more centre stage. But, I mean, this is a massive story of inequality. And I just think, again, as a country, we can do better than this. Why should it not be that if you're born in Poplar or Luton, that you have the same access to sport and green space as if you go to Eton? You know, why is it most of our prime ministers come from Eton?
But isn't it because those private schools are headquartered where there is a lot of land? I mean, it's just a property that they've always inhabited, and they happen to have green space on site. A lot of state schools are in city centre locations. There are plenty of private schools in city centre locations that also don't have green space.
My kids' primary school.
That's one hell of an admission.
My kids' primary school. No. I believe completely in state education. My kids' primary school, you know, is like this bubbly pitch. I'm going to try and get a corporate at Canary Wharf to maybe put some green astroturf on it. No, I don't think it's just about that. I think it's just about the fact that actually these kids aren't seen as important. There's a disregard. It's not OK, you know, and one day if I'm in Parliament, I'm going to change that. That is changing.
Well, look, I'll tell you that definitely I agree. All our kids deserve more outside space when they're at school. Couldn't agree with you more, Susie. Well, great news, because England have beaten Serbia 1-0 in the first game of the Euros. They're now top of the group. Let's get reaction from TV news legend and Manchester United superfan Michael Crick. Michael, was it a good performance?
Well, it was a good performance for about most of the first half. Up to 30. It was a superb performance for the first 35 minutes, in fact. You know, it was really fluent and aggressive, and we were, causing Serbia real problems. And we got a great goal from Jude Bellingham after 12 minutes. And then it sort of, Serbia sort of came back towards the end of the first half. And the second half, we were under the cosh for a lot of it. And I was thinking, oh, no, it's going to be the same old, same old. It's going to be another draw in the opening game against a lesser team or even a defeat. But somehow we managed to hold on with a great save from Jason Pickford and a great clearance off the line from Harry Kane. And, we got the result. We got, in the European Championship, we normally start with a bad result. Well, this time we started with a good result, but it wasn't a totally convincing performance.
Michael, can we win the tournament?
Yes. I don't think we will, but we can. I mean, there are about, there are 6 teams that could, and we've got some superb players these days. I mean, Jude Bellingham, absolutely world class. Harry Kane's still there. We got, obviously Phil Foden, although we didn't see much of him tonight, the Manchester City player. Hate to say it. And Kobbie Mainoo of United, he came on as a late sub. So, it looks promising in that regard. But, that's been the story of so many tournaments that we've had. We've looked promising and it's all gone wrong in the end. But I think Gareth Southgate is a great manager. He has a spirit about his England teams that we saw in the World Cup 2 years ago, the European Championship last time round when England got to the final. So, it could happen. But, there's a sort of one in 5 chance, I suppose, that England will win the tournament.
Meanwhile, Labour look odds-on for victory on July the 4th, but a couple of cracks appearing. Daily Mail, Michael Crick, has Labour let the cat out of the bag on tax. Wes Streeting doing the Sunday morning rounds, I think Laura Koonsberg on the BBC, saying that their manifesto is not the sum total of its spending plans. Your reaction?
Well, I mean, we all knew that, didn't we? And I think the public know that. And, let's be honest, the public, hardly anybody reads the manifestos. I haven't got round to reading the manifestos yet because I've been too busy working on other things. And there was a time, where you'd go into W.H. Smith's in an election and they'd be piled up on the desk at the counter and you could buy them for a shilling or something. Well, that's 50 years ago. I was a schoolboy. No longer. And I think maybe the public dip in and out, but they know that there's going to have to be spending cuts, extra taxes, and they know that Labour has been, less than honest about this. But people are still keen to vote Labour, even though they're not keen to vote Labour with any enthusiasm. If you've seen the difference, they want to vote Labour because they hate the Conservatives. They want to get Labour out. I mean, the Conservatives out. I mean, the interesting thing is, have you seen on television in this election, certainly haven't seen, a single vox pop with a voter saying, oh, yes, I love Keir Starmer. I think he's a wonderful guy. He's so exciting. Labour is so exciting. No. It's not like that. It's all anti-Tory. It's all anti-Conservative.
It does seem like a very negative dynamic that's at play. Yeah. Michael, thank you for sharing the good news about England's victory. We'll catch up soon. And thank you to my amazing pundits tonight. Really enjoyed your company, Benedict, Susie and Emma. Most importantly, thank you for your company over the last few days and for your messages online. I'll be back on Friday at 8. Headliners is next.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. We're expecting heavy showers on Tuesday, but by the time we reach midweek, there'll be plenty of dry weather around, even some sunshine across most of the country. For the weekend, though, we have had low pressure draped across the UK, which has generally brought an unsettled picture, plenty of rain and showers. And it's this low pressure which is pushing this area of rain into northern parts of England by the time we reach this evening. Generally clearing across Scotland with a few showers creeping into the north, but across central areas and in the south, plenty of clear weather overnight, which means it's going to feel a little bit cooler. May even start to see some mist and fog develop by the time we reach Monday morning. And then across the north, generally milder, where that cloud sticks around. So to start on Monday, then, we are going to start to see some showers feed in across Scotland, which is pretty much the setup for the rest of the day. A little bit drier across Northern Ireland and parts of northern England, just some spots of rain and drizzle, mainly across hills. But elsewhere, across central areas of the UK, southern parts of Wales and down across the south coast, there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start the day. Generally, though, Monday is going to be quite an unsettled day. Plenty of sunny spells and showers. The odd shower could be heavy at times as well in the northeast. May even hear the odd rumble of thunder. But generally across the south and southeast, it's going to be largely dry, and we'll even start to see some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. And that's where it is generally going to be warmest. Highs of 22, maybe even 23 Celsius, depending on how much sunshine we see. But elsewhere, temperatures generally around average, where that cloud sticks around. For Tuesday, then, once again, generally an unsettled day with those sunny spells and showers. These too could be heavy at times in the northeast, and the southeast catches the most of the driest weather as well, and that's where temperatures once again are going to be at their highest. Generally, though, from midweek onwards, turning drier with some sunshine. And that's it from me. Bye for now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Tens of thousands of British troops joined Allied nations storming the beaches of Normandy.
D-Day opened the long-awaited second front, of course, helping to liberate France from Nazi rule. So this isn't just a commemoration, is it, of the history, Cameron? It's very much a royal event.
Yeah, it absolutely is, because as we said earlier, the King, and by extension the royal family, has an incredibly important relationship with the armed forces. The King is Colonel-in-Chief, the head of the armed forces. So he knows the sacrifices that these people make. And his grandfather, of course, was monarch during World War II. And he spoke of his grandfather's frustration that he couldn't go across to Normandy on D-Day itself because it was far too dangerous. The British government wouldn't let him. Similarly with Churchill as well. But what he would have done is heard the stories from his grandfather and also his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. So the King and the Queen heard all these harrowing stories. And I think with all of that in mind, when we saw them yesterday in Portsmouth, I think the emotion perhaps overwhelmed the Queen, as we've seen on the front pages this morning. The King looked visibly moved as well. He gave a very heartfelt speech.
And the King and the Queen during the war, Cameron, were incredibly important part of it because there was a suggestion that the Queen and her children, which had been Princess Margaret and the future Queen, should be moved to Canada, to live in Canada during the war to protect them. And she said, I go where my husband goes. So she stayed in Britain. They stayed in Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace took bombs during the Blitz. There was the famous moment when she went to the East End and said, I can now look you in the